Hello, hello, hello. This is Terry Edwards, Renegade Recruiter, and welcome to another podcast. And this week's guest is Donnie Gupton from the USA. I'm not going to say any more about Donnie other than that's who he is. If you've been in the industry for any while, you'll know who he is anyway. So Donnie, thank you first of all. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on, Terry. I'm excited to be here and hang out with you.
Excellent, excellent. So for those that don't know, and I know you're well known in the industry, tell us a bit about who you are and who you serve, please, buddy.
Yeah, so my focus is on, specifically on online marketing and lead generation, specifically geared towards, recruiting agencies, executive search firms, and staffing companies, mainly in kind of that boutique feel, all around the globe. So, I'm working with people in the US, UK, Australia, all over the place. And, really the focus is to give people the skills to, generate leads in a more modern way, if you will, focusing on leveraging online marketing and lead generation and automation and things like that. So, that's what I've been at for the last, 4 years. I really enjoy being in the space and the impact that my clients are making is something that's fun to watch.
Awesome. And before you did this, what were you doing previous to that? How did you get into this?
Yeah, so good question. So, the long short of it is, I started when I graduated college. I kind of went back and, as we were talking a little bit beforehand about, you and Drew, similar story with me and my dad. I went and kind of worked with my dad out of college. It was a good place for me to go start my entrepreneurial journey. I knew that I wanted to do something like that, and I had the opportunity right away with my dad. And so, I was always obsessed with growing business. I was always obsessed with online marketing and sales and lead generation because I knew the only way I was going to make more money is if I was putting more money in my dad's pocket. So that was kind of the motivation early on. And then 2008 hit, and with a global recession, and we just got into a new lease. We just signed a big Yellow Pages contract. And next thing you know, there's nothing coming in. And so at that point, everything went effort-based. And so I started, following guys like Gary Vee and started to look at everything I could do to help my business survive during that recession, all through hustle and effort. And so that's when YouTube was kind of humming. And so we really, at that point, YouTube was our big thing. We created a YouTube channel, had a lot of success with that. And then our company ended up going from under $1 million company before the recession to over a $6 million company coming out of the recession. And so I realized a couple of things that that the skills and the things that I was doing were working, and I was enjoying that. I also learned really quick that I didn't want to be in the flooring industry anymore. And so naturally I went out. I always knew I wanted to coach and help people. And so I went out and started looking for other, home improvement type businesses. And I was in this executive group, and I was working with a friend of mine, Dean, and he owned Solo Point Staffing Solutions here in the Bay Area. And so that's really what exposed me to the staffing and recruiting industry. And as Dean and I started to do some things together, and I saw, really I saw at that time, with, like I said, exposure to the staffing and recruiting industry. And I saw, wow, there's a lot of opportunity to implement some more modern approaches here. And so at that point, I started to kind of help people do it with them. And through a lot of trial and error, we came up with what I call the relevant recruiter method. And that's how I ended up really kind of supplanting myself and, planting my flag here in the staffing and recruiting industry. But yeah, my focus is really just on that online marketing and lead generation side of things.
Excellent. And some interesting things there. You said that you use more modern ways of getting business. That brought a smile to my face because and I know that a lot of recruiters out there think that the only way of getting business is cold calling and begging for business. Yeah. So just to let you know, some people listening to this now going, what? There's other ways other than cold calling and begging for business? And yes, there is. So could you just give us an overview of the sort of thing that you mean when you say the more modern ways?
Yeah, so it's really, my approach is when the long-term goal is to focus on building a relevant, authoritative brand that's going to attract people to you. And this is one of the great things that online marketing allows us to do, all for the cost of nothing, as you well know. So, what we really focus on is taking platforms, our social media platforms like LinkedIn, and, turning that into, a lead generation machine. Now, one thing that I want to make clear is a lot of people have sat on LinkedIn and get a bunch of spammy messages all the time. Is the approach isn't to just necessarily hammer people and constantly ask. It's to position yourself as an authority and leverage different types of technology to ultimately generate phone calls. The argument is not, hey, we all know at the end of the day, we got to be either face-to-face if we can be, which right now in today's economy isn't happening. But, the next obviously best thing is to be in some sort of phone contact, whether that's a Zoom call or a phone call. But how we get to there is really what we're focused on. So, a lot of that's going to deal with, having creative messaging strategies, in email and LinkedIn, as well as, focusing on content that's going to really establish you as the authority and show that you really know your industry, and really focus on being kind of a resource to the market rather than just being another recruiter on the other end of the phone. So that's kind of what we mean by modern, looking at video, looking at all different ways to just show up differently, to the marketplace.
Yeah, it's funny. I entered the industry longer than I care to remember, 25 odd years ago. And when I entered the industry, I was given a Rolodex, and we used fax machines. So it was given a Rolodex, a phone, and a fax. And that's how you got business. And it kind of blows me away now that some guys, they haven't got the Rolodex or the fax, but all they're using is the phone to get business. And that's, there's over 100 ways of generating leads for a recruitment firm without picking, without cold calling. So that's very interesting. And what's your response to those guys out there that say, "Oh, you're kidding me. There is only one way of getting business. The only way of getting business is cold." What's your typical response to that?
Well, I think that, it's not an argument of, I think you just said it yourself, is there's really 100 different ways to get, business. And so, for me, like with my marketing, I always plan to flag in and will, state my opinion about how I feel about cold calling, which is not nothing warm and fuzzy. But I also know that cold calling obviously has worked and can still work. Yeah. But there's just, the thing about it is like there's opportunity cost, and what you're doing. I don't care what you're doing and how hungry or aggressive you are with your cold calling. It never matches what technology can do. And so then the challenge usually becomes, well, I don't want to just be another spammy person, so to speak. But it's learning how to do and leverage the technology in a non-spammy way so that you can come across, again, as the authority is the ultimate approach that we want to have there. So, I think that there's just looking at, being open to other ideas. The thing for me is like every single year, I'm always looking for a new strategy and a new way to generate business. Now, I think there's a balance to this, right? Because once people go online, I think the biggest challenge that they have is they start to spread themselves too thin. They don't make one platform work for them first before they start to go to other platforms, right? But I think when you look at it that way and you just have this, the mindset of like, what else can I do? And I don't know enough and show me more. I think there's a lot out there. And really, you and I talking on here, it's not even a matter of, is this possible? This is reality. We're seeing it every day. You and I are seeing it every day with what our clients are doing. And it's just short-sighted thinking if you're not willing to at least explore that, I think.
Yeah. So some interesting point there. You talked about short-sighted thinking and mindset. In your opinion, what's the type of mindset that would probably stop someone from achieving success using this method? And then what's the type of mindset that when you kind of talk to these guys, you go, yeah, this is so right for you?
Well, I think the biggest mindset that's killing people is the transactional mindset, or operating out of a lack of abundance, right? Mm-hmm. And everything, when you're in this place of, gosh, I need a new order, a new search right now, I believe the universe makes that show up, right? And so a lot of what happens is people come into a program looking for a quick Band-Aid to just get their next search, and their mindset's not into like, how can I impact my industry? How can I impact my clients? How can I impact my candidates? And that's really the mindset that I see of the most successful people that have gone through my program and the people that I get to interview on my podcast. There's a common theme, and those people are typically interested in more than just the financial part of it. Now, let's not BS each other here. We all know we're in business to make money, but usually there's a greater, desire to make an impact in the market. And people are really built into the long game. They're not worried about, what's going to happen with this post and what's going to happen with that. And as you probably know, Terry, when people are starting to put themselves out there, there's a lot of mindset work to be done. And it's usually this fear of rejection. What am I going to say? Who's going to want to hear this anyways? Am I just going to be another person that's part of the noise? And it's really just buying into more of a long-term strategy that, the one thing that works for me is I just try to be me. And I have a belief that there's enough people in the world that like me, trust me, to give, there's plenty of business for me to be had out there. And the same thing for everybody else, but I'm not trying to always do that every single day. It's a long game, and I think that's the biggest thing, is really just buying into more of a long-term process that's not transactional, because that's what really puts you in that position of power, right? I don't need you as a client, or, I want you as a client. And I think that's the same type of mindset that a lot of the people that I see that are really successful, within the space have, is they're trying to make an impact, and it's bigger than them than just that transaction.
Yeah. Some really good points there. Excellent points. What you said about the transactional type mindset, and you're absolutely right, because the moment the recruiter position themselves as just another recruiter and transactional recruiter,
yep,
you've now become a commodity. So all the hiring manager can say to you is, well, what's your fee? I can get it for XYZ down the road. Can you compete with that? And it's that kind of conversation. And as you rightly pointed out, position yourself as an authority. And what's interesting, by the way, what we find, the moment you're perceived as an authority, there's less resistance to your fee.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
You go in.
100%.
Yeah. So some really good points there. And the mindset I thought was a really good point about, you're absolutely right. It is either fear of rejection. Another common one is what's called imposter syndrome.
Yep.
Who am I to post this on LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever? And they have this imposter syndrome, and the consequence of which they don't do anything. And the question we always ask,
and I'd love to speak on that, because as you know, my story, I'm not a recruiting owner, right? And so what's the natural shade that's always thrown my way is, oh, well, you didn't come from this, you don't know this, right? And so, and I always tell my clients this, like, hey, look, there was a level of imposter syndrome that I had to work through, but I worked through it. So, what I'm thinking, there's not this magic that, people that put themselves out there are just, don't feel those feelings. They do. They just take the extra step to push through it. Right. I think there's always those level of things with your mindset to understand, is like, you can't compare yourself on social media with somebody else's journey and where they're at. And that's one of the things that I really encourage my clients. Like, you just have to embrace where you're at. Forget about engagement, forget about likes, forget about comments. Do the job, do the work, show up over and over and over again, because that's really what it's about. And then when you can come past the imposter syndrome, that's 3 years in the rearview mirror for me now, but if I just sat in that, I wouldn't be creating content. I wouldn't be, showing my greatness to the world. Right. And I'm not saying that as a pat on my back, but that's what I believe is with everybody, is like, everybody's got some greatness in them that the world deserves to know about.
Well, I agree with you 100% there, and when clients say to us, well, who am I to post this? I say, who are you not to post this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think there's recruiters out there that don't do a good a job as you that are going to post this? Of course there are. So you need to look at that. Really, really good point there. But early on, you talked about, you studied some of the other marketing people out there. Who are your heroes, and who did you study? Who was your influences?
Yeah, so Gary V, like I mentioned earlier, he was my first guy. And he had Wine Library TV. I started Flooring My Life TV. And that was kind of my first person that I really embraced. Now Gary's like, Gary's tired to me now. Not saying he's not the man. He's obviously the man, but his hustle doesn't really align with me as much anymore. But I worked with a guy, Scott Olford, really, really brilliant online marketer, lead generation. I worked with another guy, Jonathan Heston, Jason Hartnov. A lot of these guys are, kind of under the radar, but more mindset. I really work a lot on mindset. Once I started getting a lot of, my marketing tactics down through, I've been through plenty of coaching programs myself, and then a lot of trial and error myself. But Scott Olford, Gary V are the bigger names. Josh Harris was another guy I worked with. But Jason Hartnov and Jonathan Heston, arguably for me, have probably done more than any of the marketing coaches, because I'm a big believer in mindset. And that's where, pushing me past those hurdles. And I know that's what we were talking early on. That's a big part of your program. And, I can't stress that that's really where it's at. I mean, that's the keys, is if you got the right mindset, then everything starts to flow after that. But and then I've followed other guys, like Frank Kern and obviously Grant Cardone. I mean, I know of those guys. Those are not people that I consider heroes, so to speak. They don't necessarily align, but I've learned, a fair share of stuff from them. Yeah.
And are there any books or anything that you'd recommend for recruiters listening to this now who are thinking, I want to get a better understanding of marketing and client attraction?
Yeah. I mean, one of the books that I really like, that I think is good for any buddy getting started in marketing, is what is it called? Copywriting Secrets by Jim Edwards. It's just a standard, very basic book. Yep. That just gives, because copy is a big thing, and it just gives you kind of enough basic nuts and bolts. And one of the classic books that's out there that's also, it's got a lot of old school stuff in it, but it just kind of goes to show that marketing is marketing. It always has been the same kind of principles, and you just change it from channel to channel, so to speak. But The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes is a great book too.
Yeah.
Yep. So those are two of my favorites that I've listened to or read on kind of a regular. And I always reference the Copywriting Secret stuff. Every once in a while, I'll go back and try to get a little nugget out of there myself. And I really enjoy those two books right there.
Yeah, agree with all that. And Chet Holmes, funny enough, I've probably read that 20 times, that book.
Yeah.
And I kind of go back to it every now and then. And it's funny that you go back to it and read something, you think, I don't remember reading this last time. And there's another nugget in there. Somewhere. Just, you've said some really interesting things. I just want to go back to what you said about copy. What's one of the biggest mistakes that you see recruiters and search firm owners doing when it comes to doing copy, be it an email, a website, a letter, wherever it is?
And make it about them. There's this thing that marketing is how well I can say why you need to work with Donnie. And if you can shift that, if you can just shift that into making it about your client or your candidate, the win is there. And, then from there, it's finding good little hooks and angles and really finding out, it's the pain and the problem, within the market. And what I think a lot of recruiters miss out on is going back to a mindset thing, is they think that every recruiter is the same. Oh, well, I just do the same job as everybody else. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe, at the end of the day, we all do, but the one who markets it better is going to be the one that, gets the business. And so, learning how to really tap into your client's pains and problems and, articulate that through, whether it's, LinkedIn copy, email copy, video copy, all of the above. That's what gets somebody to kind of, it's almost like you're acknowledging like, oh, shoot. Oh, cool. Like I'm going through this too. Oh, I'm not a failure that I'm not filling these roles, or that I have this high turnover, or this, that, and the other. And people, I don't think understand the psychology of that, is that marketing really, when you can align with somebody, through their emotions, and we don't think of this oftentimes with the business, but that's really where it's at. And if you can expose somebody and make their, I guess the thing is, a lot of people think that copy also has to be how-to. I'm only giving away value if I'm showing you exactly the steps. And really, if you keep everything at the what and the why, kind of on a higher level, that actually will serve people better, because then that's what's going to give people to actually want to come take that next step with you. And the how-to content, just kind of puts you into another boat. But you can, people fail to realize the thing sometimes, that you can have just as much value by giving somebody an epiphany as showing them how to do something. And sometimes when you show them how to do something, you're really not giving them enough, and it ends up putting you in a different light, right? So, I think if people are focused more on, marketing to their market, not about them, that's the biggest shift that I see, people making as they come into my program.
Yeah, I would agree with you 110%. Most recruiters talk about, we've been in business 10 years. This is our mission statement, and we do this. And let me talk you through the recruitment process that we take our candidates through. And we always say, nobody really cares about that other than your close relatives, and maybe not even your close relatives that much.
Right.
Sometimes. So yeah, and it's got to be about the client. And the other thing you said there, because we do a whole thing on copywriting, that's one of our big passions in our program, is this thing, a whole thing about emotion. And I remember reading years ago that all buying decisions are based on emotion and then justified with logic. So whatever buying decision that you make, it's based on emotion. But if you're asked to explain it, you're quite logical about it. And people question and challenge us all the time when we say that. And I think one of the great examples, if you look at a magazine and look at the watches in the magazines, they will always be at 10 to 2 or 10 to 3, but the hand is in what's called a smiley face. Because they did years of research, and they found that if the watch was at 20 to 4 or frown, sales actually declined. And there's loads of evidence to support that. And I always say, don't take my word for this and anything that we're saying here. Go and look at magazines. Go and look at any ad anywhere. Go online and look at the ads. It's always a smiley face. All buying decisions are based on emotion and then justified with logic. You know, if you think about a car or whatever, there's a certain emotion that it creates as you're watching that ad for that car, and
right,
you know, and that's, you're absolutely right. That's what they've got to, in your copy, you've got to tap into. It's a really good point there. I'm kind of not surprised really, but maybe another end. You talk a lot about mindset. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in all the time we've been talking, probably, I don't know, 10-15% it's about the mindset. I want to come back to it again, because I agree with you, by the way, 100%. It is about the mindset, and we know that our biggest success comes with those. We call it intellectual curiosity. So if somebody comes into our circle and is like, "Yeah, but my market's different. That won't work."
Right.
Yeah. So just from your point of view, could you go into a bit more detail of what you mean by mindset that brings the recruiters and search firm owners their greatest success?
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, I think the mindset is, you know, it's obviously a word that's thrown around, you know, a lot. And I think people will go through different stages of mindset, and, you know, and different things of, you know, that they've been through their life, and things, their own stories that are holding them back. And, you know, so I've done work around money mindset, and I've done work around, you know, mindset about who I feel about how I love myself, and how I love my family, and how I want to show up. And I really saw a really interesting post by a friend last night. It says so many people are walking around not being authentic because they're afraid to leave their old self, because their old self is so attached to the trauma. They don't even know how to get out of they don't even know really how to be who they really are, because they're living a fake life based off of the trauma. So, you know, I think the mindset thing is, you know, I think the biggest thing ultimately for me is like just having a victor mentality, if you will. You know, it's showing up every day, no excuses, no BS, and trying to get everything done. On the flip side of that is it's okay to have a shitty day. It's okay to have an emotional day. It's okay to, you know, but there's so much in society, especially I think with males, of like, oh, well, you know, you're not supposed to have bad days. You're supposed to be strong. And, you know, I think there's a balance of embracing your entire journey and realizing that, you know, for me, I just had this conversation with my son last night, is like, it's got to be a constant challenge to show up and be better, you know, today than you were yesterday. And it's a competition with yourself to constantly be improving. And I think that's just the biggest mindset that's advantageous for me. It has been my whole life, is I believe that I'm going to do something. Yeah, I have my self-doubts along the way, but I get back into, you know, things that help with my mindset, like my meditation and journaling and things like that, and really grounding myself. But I think it's just this constant journey to improve. And tell me more. What don't I know? What can you share with me? What can I learn? You know, as I'm sitting here listening to you on, you know, as we go back and forth, there's things that I'm picking up, you know, and learning, just because that's how I'm wired. That's what I want to be. And I think that a lot of that, sometimes our ego gets in the way of, and I even talked to a guy a couple of weeks back who, he's like, man, I could use your help. He's like, I just need to get out of my own way. You know, he's like, it was very honest about it. He's like, I just think I can do everything on my own, which is fine. Right. But, you know, I think that consistent, you know, desire to grow, you know, that if you're looking at that as an individual and you want to grow your business, for example, if you're growing yourself as an individual, then your business is what's going to follow. The money's going to follow as you grow. So I think that's sometimes the thing that's overlooked, is sometimes we're looking for the next tactic or the next strategy. And we realize, you know, through time, it's like, hey, if I can get this dialed in and this tweak, that's where the money's actually going to start flowing.
Yeah, 100%. We think so. I didn't realize we think so alike. And,
yeah,
our map of the world, and some things you said there, the ego, and that's the thing that gets in the way. And people, I always explain to people that my sort of description of the ego is like your overprotective parent, that wants to keep you safe and wants you to look good all the time. So your ego will stop you from stepping outside your comfort zone and going, I've got to post this or whatever it is, because your ego's going, no. If you stay back here, nobody's going to notice you, and you're quite safe. And it's very much like the overprotective parent. And you're absolutely right. That gets in the way for the majority of our clients.
Yep.
It's also
you know, it's funny. Like I said earlier, it's a lot of the stuff that I do as I market isn't things that like I are innately comfortable for me. Right. So like, I don't like taking selfies, but I know that it's good for marketing. I don't like taking pictures with just me in there for branding. That's not like my natural personality, but that's where people have to set some of the ego aside and go, yeah, okay, that's not necessarily like who I am at nature, but I also know that I need this in order for people to be attracted to me. And it's a game that you have to kind of play. And there's so many things that, can come from, your ego and hold yourself back. So, one of the things that I've always cautioned myself with is, and I've never really bought into, is like the whole, well, share your success because other people want to work with other successful people. Well, yeah, conceptually, like I understand that, but I'm not the guy that's going to go pull up on a Ferrari, and sit there and wash it and do whatever. Yeah. It's not my style. Exactly. Right. So that's not my style. But on the flip side, as I've kind of come out of my comfort zone with this and start to share more of those things. So I shared a picture of I just moved. I got a nice, beautiful home, nice, beautiful backyard. And I posted a picture of it with my pool and waterfall and all this stuff. And, I didn't think much of it, got really great engagement, told a little story about my journey about that, and actually shared my mindset about that. Long story short, though, as I was on the phone with a client a couple weeks later, she's like, yeah, ultimately what made me want to move forward with you is that, I saw that picture of your house and this, that, and the other. And I just decided I wanted to work with somebody that has that. And I was like, wow, like that's mind blowing, because if I would have just stayed safe and wouldn't have posted that picture because it's not necessarily what I would do innately, then, I would have never had that business. Right. So I think, and I keep going back to this, and I share this with my clients. I try to be as raw as possible, that it's not always easy for everybody. Even the best marketers that you see out there every single day, the people that are putting themselves out there every day, have some level of mindset work that they're doing. And, it's kind of like one of those, I always use the riding a bicycle analogy, right? You start riding a bike. When you first ride a bike, you have your training wheels on, and then you get your training wheels off and you can ride. But then in a couple of weeks, you might be able to, jump a curb, and you might be able to, do a wheelie. You might be able to ride with no hands. But the only way you got there is because you got on the bike and started riding. And that's kind of the thing I try to get people to understand about, usually the biggest holdback is content, right? Well, if you get on the bike and you start riding, yeah, you're going to suck for a while, and you need to start to be bad first, and you need to be okay and embrace the fact that you're not going to be great. But the only way you can become good and great is through practice, and I think that's one thing that people really wish they could avoid. And that's kind of hard with today's society with, things like Amazon out there. You want something today, you can get it mailed to you tomorrow. We're just so set up for instant gratification. And content and inbound, lead generation is a process. It's something that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. So, I think that's the key things for me with mindset and being able to put myself out there is it's not always easy, as people, think. There's levels of resistance, and they always change as you get to different levels yourself. As you continue to grow, it's a whole another set of things that you're facing, right?
And what's your how do you respond to people? Because look, here's the thing, let's full disclosure here. The moment you raise your head above the parapet, people are going to have a pop at you, you're going to get criticized. And one of my all-time marketing heroes is a guy called Dan Kennedy. Yeah. And I remember him saying, if you haven't got somebody, if you haven't pissed somebody off by lunchtime with your marketing, you're not doing enough. And that was a real breakthrough for me. It's like, all right, because before that, I didn't get that you just piss people off, because that's just like, what's your response to that when clients saying, oh, I better not put this post out there because I'm going to annoy somebody, or they won't like it, or whatever?
Post it. I just keep it simple all the time. Instead, post it. Like I said, I get my fair amount of shade, and I always tell people, I call it putting the flag in the ground. You need to be willing. Good marketers are people that are doing this to a part of the market and doing this to the other part of the market. And most people want to play here in the middle, and it would be like, for you and I, it would be, with the way we're positioned, it'd be like me going around and saying, yeah, cold calling is really cool all the time. It's good. You can do that too, but you can also try this. It's like, no, it's like, boom, cold calling sucks. You need to do online marketing and lead generation. Does that make that all the cold callers want to come work with me? No, but I'm not trying to work with them. And that's where the abundance mindset comes into play, right? It's like, hey, there's going to be a certain part of my audience that's really going to love this message, and there's going to be another part that rejects it. And that's good marketing. And, so it's being willing to show up. And I always tell them, just like the same thing you said, is like, look, until you have haters, you really haven't arrived. And, you really want to start throwing some salt in other people's stuff. That's going to come your way. But, that's really where you have to detach from the ego and realize that 9 times out of 10, it's just what that person's going through that day, to show that stuff and share that stuff on there. And so it's just a part of it. And the first time you get them, they probably sting a little bit more. But then through time, you kind of realize that, okay, moving on. And I always call it like an asshole detection machine, right? It's like, okay, well, if this person's going to be an asshole here on my social media feed, nobody I'd ever want to do business with, ever. So thank you very much. We did ourselves both a favor here. But just another specific story on that. About a year ago, I went back and actually was doing a lot of mindset work and came back from a kind of a weekend mastermind, and man, was I on fire when I got back. And so I wrote a post and dropped a couple F-bombs in the post, and I did it and didn't really care about it and just was being authentically me. It wasn't like it was vulgar and crazy or anything like that, but I was just using, dropped a couple F-bombs in there. And boy, oh boy, the pushback that I got from that. And there were certain people that were telling me I was going to go out of business. Oh, this is going to work negatively against you. And my business is probably up 300% since that time. So it's funny what people think, and you can't get into, if you start listening to everybody else's nonsense, then, it's a tough thing. And one last thing, one of my coaches told me is if they're not a client, they don't get a vote. If they're not a client, if they're not paying you money, they're not a vote. One guy commented on when I did that thing, oh, well, I was thinking about working with you. Cool. Well, keep thinking about it, buddy, because there's a bunch of people that are working it with me,
I love your attitude. It's exactly. I remember we did slightly different. I wrote some copy for a client, and part of the copy said, look, if you're a hiring manager and you're looking for the cheapest candidate, then stop reading because this isn't for you. If you want the best candidate, keep reading because this is exactly for you. And she pushed back on that, saying, I can't say that because I said, but that's the whole point of copy. You want to repel the price buyers. I'm deliberately writing the copy so you repel those price buyers who want the cheapest candidate. And you want the hiring manager that says, no, I want the best candidate, because you can't have both.
Yep, you can't. Absolutely. Yeah, well, and that's it. It's that, well, I want to play safe. I don't want to ruffle any feathers here. And it's like, well, that's cool. Well, you can be liked if you want. If your goal is to be liked, then go ahead and play safe. If your goal is to get business, then be bold.
Off air, just before we went on hill, I was pulling Donnie's leg about I won't go. We just talk about the election and whatever your political view now, and it doesn't matter. I'm just going to illustrate something now. But whatever your opinion of Donald Trump, he never said, "I better not tweet that." Whatever your opinion, he didn't. I can't remember how many millions voted for him and for Biden. They didn't play it safe. You can't play it safe if you're going to do that sort of thing. Whatever 100%. Your political opinion, by the way, I want to be.
Yeah. Well, and I use it all the time. I tell my clients all the time, like, hate him or love him, Donald Trump. What is his opinion about the wall? He wants a wall. It's not like no, and it's that. And there's a certain people that go, oh, I can't stand him for that, and then there's people who go, hell yeah, the wall, and it's like, okay, he's playing to his base, and that's what people, that's brilliant marketing. Hate him or love him. Right. And Biden's got his own examples too, right? Where they put their flag in the ground. This is what we stand for. And that's what draws people towards them. And, there isn't any political person that's out there that's taken a middle road. And that's probably part of the problem though. With politics, right? I mean, because politics really isn't marketing, but they use the same stuff.
And the other one we always use is if you go to YouTube and find your favorite piece of music and you listen to it, you think, oh, that's beautiful. And you'll see thousands of thumbs up. But I guarantee there will be some people complaining about that same piece of music. You just can't please all the people all the time. And kind of, if you could acknowledge that, it helps you move on.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So true. This is, absolutely fantastic. And sorry, so many things you said I found interesting. I want to go back to. You mentioned about mindset. You mentioned about journaling and meditation, which are things that we cover in our course with our clients. So just give me your feedback, first of all, on journaling, what it is and what it does for you, and then your feedback on meditation and what it is and what it does for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I just believe, in general, when we wake up, we're not wired for success. I think if you wake up and you're going to go through the day like a robot, I mean, people are being successful that way, but you're not at your peak performance. And this is what I've learned, this is what works for me. Right. But I get up every morning and I start my day with a meditation. And I just keep it simple. I just do a 10-minute meditation to make sure I'm consistent. There's other days where I get to do 30-minute or hour meditation, but every single day I make sure that I'm getting at least 10 minutes in to start it. And then from there, I go right into the journal. And the journal is just, for me, it's a way to kind of reset and focus in on my day. But the first thing I start doing is kind of, sketching out my journey. I like to get a little creative in my journal to start waking up my brain. So I do a little drawing of me going up a mountain in my journey and my path. And then, I talk about my family because that's what anchors me, family first. And then I'll do a little quote from like my kid. Hey, Dad, can we play catch later or something like that? So I'm really starting to manifest, my day and in my business. And then I go right into gratitude from there. Gratitude that has been a game changer for me, as much as everybody throws it around and stuff like that. Gratitude, I think, is the key to be, happy with exactly where you're at in your life, all your blessings that you have in the exact moment. If you're not happy here, it doesn't matter when you get to where you think you want to be, you're going to have the same set of shit. So, and then the other ones are just affirmations around things that, I, feel like I'm, trying to strengthen an area of mindset on and things like that. And then I always close my journaling out with, my intentions for the day. And I always work off of a top 3. So I always give myself 3 big rocks every single day. Those are the first 3 things that I'm going to do. It's not meaning I'm not going to do more than that, but I want to make sure that the things that I think are going to make an impact on my day, I schedule that and do that and put that on my calendar. So that's kind of how, I've been, wiring and throwing a workout in there. And, I feel like I'm winning and building momentum before I've even stepped into my office.
Yeah. Do you know, it's almost identical to my morning routine. Yeah. Well, yeah, almost. I have a glass of water first. The first thing I do is get a glass of water to rehydrate myself, and then almost identical to that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's, I think it's just intentionality, it's being intentional, right? About your day. It's being intentional about how you want to show up. And even this morning, I mean, for me, we started this thing, it was 7 a.m. for me. It's in the evening for you, but I still got to make sure I got my routine done. I had to get up a little bit earlier today to get to my office and stuff, but I still want to make sure I get my routine done because, I want to come here and bring energy. Well, my belief is, I could have just stumbled in and do that, but right now I feel like I'm here, I'm alert, I'm present, and that's because I've done work beforehand to get the engines going.
Yeah, awesome, absolutely fantastic. Really appreciate that, and you sharing that.
Absolutely.
Our guys, listen to this because we are very similar. Just come back to something else you said as well. You talked about abundance. Well, clearly that's something that we believe in because here we are. People will look at us and go, "Aren't you guys competitors?" But we'll say, "Hell, come on to our podcast." I know I'm going to be on your podcast. Is it next week or the week after, or whatever? So again,
I think we're on for Friday. Yeah. So
Friday. Exactly. Sorry, my apologies. It is Friday.
Yeah. No, well, and I'm interviewing. I've interviewed other competitors. I'm interviewing other competitors, and it's just a pure abundance. And the thing about it is there's enough people, out there for all of us to have enough business to do well, first and foremost. And second, the reality in coaching space is, you and I both know, is that if, somebody buys your program, there's probably a better chance that they'll buy my program after the fact anyways, because people that invest in coaching are typically the same type of people that will invest in different coaches, So when you understand that, like, hey, there's abundance, there's no, we're better off being aligned with each other than not. And there's plenty to go around, and there's things that we would teach that are probably the same, and there's things that we would teach would be an apple and an orange, and yeah, I mean, I think that it doesn't mean that both of us aren't trying to grow our business and be as successful as we both can be, right? But yeah, I think there's plenty of opportunity out there, and for me, it goes back into what part of me having a podcast is because of what I want to give back to the market. Right. And if I can interview and bring great people on like yourself, then that benefits my market, and that's more of what I try to do with the long term. Right. And I know that there's going to be certain people that watch this and go, man, I would never work with Donnie. I love Terry. And then there might be the opposite.
That's right.
I really align with Donnie. And I think that goes back into marketing, is like being who you are. There's going to be a certain person that you naturally attract different than the person that I naturally attract. And some will be attracted to both of us, but it's funny, what I find is, talking to people is very rarely is there much crossover with a lot of folks. I mean, sometimes there's competition, and yeah, of course I've heard your name come up on sales calls and things like that, but people there's millions of recruiters
That's right.
out there to be helped.
Yeah. More than you and I
need more of people like you and I, really.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely right. Yeah. A great attitude. And for our clients listening to this, can they reach out to you, say, on LinkedIn?
Yeah. Donnie Gupton on LinkedIn. Connect with me. I'd love to connect with anybody.
Could you spell your name? Spell your first and
second name? It's Donnie, and the last name is Gupton. G as in George, Upton. And
awesome.
So
they can connect you on LinkedIn.
I would appreciate it. Yep. Feel free to reach out and connect. I'm trying to push as much content on there as I possibly can, and you'll see my promotion for our show coming up on Friday, Terry. I'm excited to be interviewing you and Drew on Friday. Hopefully he's going to be doing better then. So
hopefully, I'm sure he will be. I'll be honest with you, I've enjoyed that more than I thought, actually. I didn't realize we had so much in common, and had a very similar map of the world and how we view the world. So thoroughly enjoyed that, and a massive thank you for agreeing to jump onto this webinar. Very much appreciated. And
likewise, I really enjoyed the conversation, and same thing, didn't know where this was going to go, but definitely we're aligned in a lot more ways than not. And I really appreciate you having me on here on the show and allowing me to share with everybody.
Thank you very much indeed. This is Terry Edwards, Renegade Recruiter. Until next time, folks, take care, take action, and be relentless.